Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Did I just review Marvel? I feel like I haven't slept in days. What day is it? Holy crap! It's October 26th! It's our 7th anniversary! Hell yeah, people! It is 7 years to the day that Atop the Fourth Wall premiered in video form on the old blogspot that is now radically out of date because it still has blip embeds on it, and people still commenting on it on occasion, even though I've been, directing people to my site for over a year now. Yes, a mere 7 years ago, I decided to finally tackle the Spider-Man Clone Saga in the storyline that really got it to start sucking smoke and mirrors. Half my face was in the shadow, I still lived with my parents, and I weighed like 40 pounds less. Good times. For the last few years, we've been focusing on the pointless and idiotic character Judas Traveler, which distracted us from the reason we're all here. The Clone Saga! The fight over who was the real Spider-Man. How many ways the story can get derailed, repeating the same points over and over about identity and personhood long after those questions were resolved and everyone stopped caring about them. Yes, Judas Traveler and his navel-gazing really distracted us from the clones and their navel-gazing. But even the creative team realized it was time to move away from that nonsense and actually advance something, so celebration, people! We're finally moving forward in the Clone Saga instead of jumping around the various stories. This takes place right after The Greatest Responsibility, which I reviewed back in 2010. Peter has finally, officially quit being Spider-Man so he can raise his coming baby and live life in retirement. Happy ending for the guy the readers have been following for years, while Ben Reilly, who was confirmed at the end of last year's comics to be the real Peter, could now create a new status quo, new supporting characters, and be single again. Because apparently we only read Spider-Man to see his romantic life fail or something. I don't know, whatever some writers think about the marriage. And honestly, nowadays I really wish they had stuck with that. Sure, it's a bit off-putting knowing that Peter's been a clone this whole time, but screw it. We've had 40+ years of science fiction literature about cloning that illustrates how they're people too, damn it. Let Peter have a happy ending, and Ben can be the new hotness. And the creative team was excited as all hell for this. Recall that the Clone Saga was supposed to have been done with months prior. Maximum Clonage was one such ending, then we had the Time Bomb two-parter I've glanced over, and now finally, The Greatest Responsibility finally allowed Peter to pass the torch over to Ben and let him be the new Spider-Man. A big promotional push, something to excite readers and see a new era before them. And if you've seen SF Debris' video series, The Rise and Fall of the Comic Empire, you should know that nothing that simple could happen over at Marvel during this time. As I have said before, the marketing department was in charge of things now. And I am reminded of an old Dilbert comic strip where the company's marketing department had a 2-drink minimum. Let's go back a bit to talk about Maximum Clonage. The reason that storyline was structured the way it was, with the foil covers and the Alpha and Omega issues, was because of the massive success the Age of Apocalypse event had had for the X-Men books. But another aspect of Age of Apocalypse was that all the X-Men books were put on hold, with new X-Men titles that lasted for 4 months. And of course, since they were trying to mirror that success, the marketing department wanted 4 months of 4 new Scarlet Spider-Man books, since this would be their last time to take advantage of the Scarlet Spider brand, as it were, before he became Spider-Man. Now, Ben as the new Spider-Man had already been procrastinated on, so the creative team fought back, arguing for only 1 month of new titles if they had to, but eventually they compromised in the most bizarre manner. 3 of the new titles would last for 2 months, and the 4th, Web of Scarlet Spider, would be 4 issues. Even though after those first 2 months, there wouldn't be a Scarlet Spider anymore. I'd say this kind of thing never happens anymore, but even now, when the final issues of event comics end up getting pushed back, the aftermath issues of those events end up being published before the event is over.
Instant cassettes. They're out in stores before the movie is finished.
What makes it worse is that nobody but the marketing department wanted to do this. Age of Apocalypse was planned in advance. It was a storyline that the X-Men writers had been working on and enthusiastic about. This Scarlet Spider stunt was an idea forced on the creative teams by people who thought a book would be relevant 2 months after its title character no longer technically existed. And since this was forced on them, they had no idea what the hell the story was gonna be about. They just had to throw some crap together and hope it made sense. What's worse, because these were last-minute additions to things that nobody wanted to do anyway, it required additional artists who didn't regularly work on these characters to help the rushed, chaotic feel of all this. So we have a bloated, rushed storyline with unenthusiastic creators on comics that nobody but non-creative people wanted as part of an effort to rip off a much more successful work in the latest in a long, increasingly frustrating endeavor that no longer even had anybody who had first envisioned it working on it. 7 years later, my friends. Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Let's dig into Spider-Man, or Scarlet Spider, Virtual Mortality.
Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Life out, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he's a man punch, wears a pretty hat. Linkara, he has a magic gun. Where'd he purchase that? Linkara, coins, robots, Amazon and trucks. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara,
to keep me suspended in time with you. Don't let this moment die.
We begin with Web of Scarlet Spider #1. This is a 4-part storyline, and I just spent all that time on a history lesson. Plus, I'm reading from a trade, so let's just skip the covers unless there's something of note. We open with Krypton's red sun exploding. Huh, that's different. Oh man, Scuds! Look who's swinging down at us! It's Spider-Man! I'm gonna get his autograph after I stab this guy! I just noticed, the guy's shirt is open. Were they cutting off his shirt? Those shirt buttons are worth millions, man! And the Scarlet Spider arrives, making sure that his crotch is right dead center in the middle of this 2-page spread. This also gives us a chance to show off Ben's new weapons that he created for the Scarlet Spider persona. Knockout stingers he can fire, as well as the staple weapon of the Scarlet Spider. Impact webbing. I friggin' love that about this. Both utilize Peter's scientific skills while creating weapons that still match with what Spidey is best known for. After all, Spidey's been able to craft stuff out of his webbing before. Impact webbing is just taking that concept to a new level, wherein it hits someone and then expands around a person and wraps them up. I'm actually surprised they didn't keep it around after the Clone Saga was over. And they thought they were dealing with some amateur. Sorry, pal, but that's one story that's so convoluted, I'm not even sure that I believe it. Ben, just because you realize that the Clone Saga is stupid doesn't make it any less stupid. His spider sense goes off and he quickly hides, but isn't able to detect anything suspicious aside from a helicopter flying nearby. And as the helicopter in question continues its descent into these canyons of steel and glass, it soon becomes apparent that it has a decidedly specific agenda. My god, they're hanging up a poster for another Paul Blart movie! This is serious! Actually, it's lowering a platform down with 2 guys in green science suits? I don't know how to describe them, but basically henchman gear with pouches and guns. They land on top of a van and start shooting down into it, but the Scarlet Spider swings in. Now this is just a guess on my part, but you guys aren't shooting the new Jackie Chan film, are you? Yes, my favorite Jackie Chan film, Rumble in the Clone Saga. He uses his impact webbing on the guys, but apparently their suits are booby-trapped, setting off a smoke bomb if it's touched. Must be difficult getting these things dry cleaned. While the two guys in the van run away, their dialogue suggesting they're criminals, Scarlet Spider decides to go after the helicopter, but in the smoke screen, it's escaped. The cops soon arrive and inspect the van, revealing that inside of it are boxes and boxes of experimental computer chips that had been stolen that morning. Of course, the true culprit stands revealed, Mr. Computer! Or maybe that computer chip guy who was stopped by Hostess products. Really not that different in the end. However, Ben doesn't see it that way. Oh, great. Not only do I not catch the bad guys, but now it turns out I was protecting stolen property. Can I do anything right? Well, I'm quite fond of your costume. Maybe your true calling was in fashion. This wouldn't have happened to Peter. You're right, of course. Peter would have found whole new ways to screw up. But yeah, an honest mistake that anybody would have made given the circumstances, and suddenly he's all brooding. We then cut over to the female Dr. Octopus, who was behind the attempted robbery of those already stolen materials. After consulting with her ally, known as the Master Programmer, long story there, and it also doesn't make much sense, so no need to go into it right now, she swears to get the computer chips back for her vague and unexplained plans. Hopefully, those plans involve standing in a way that doesn't make it look like she's hopping on one leg. We cut over to the apartment of Dr. Sayward Trainer, where Ben is throwing a temper tantrum, hurling his bag on the floor, and yelling about how much he sucks. I tell you, Sayward, I couldn't be any dumber if my last name was Gump. Well, stupid is as stupid does, comic. Ben wants to figure out what he wants to do with his life, but appreciates crashing on Sayward's couch in the meantime. We then cut over to the rival mob people who were stealing the experimental computer chips, where they berate their people for failure, and shoot one of them dead. I never liked you, Vic. You had poor taste in clothes. You're all wearing suits. Ben begins his job search, and of course fails at the various places he tries, including this buffet. Sorry, kid, we'd only need help if we had any business. Well, it might help if you had any food on display to sell. He also spots this place. The Club Noir, huh? I've heard about this place. Very trendy. Wow, they're so trendy they don't even need a sign with consistent lettering. What do you mean, no? I've got plenty of waiting experience. For example, I've been waiting for months now to become Spider-Man, but no one will let me. However, despite that experience, he never bothered to get any references. And just look at how trendy this place is, with its, 4 customers. Okay, that's only how many we can see, but somehow I doubt Club Noir is really the hottest attraction in the middle of the day. He manages to impress them by catching a tripping waitress and her tray and drink. Hey, that was amazing! Weren't you in that movie Cocktail? Nah, that was my twin brother. You were cloned from Tom Cruise? The waitress he saved says they should give him a job, and you should trust her and her head that's as large as her upper body. Later, Dr. Octopus's goons attack a police van carrying the computer chips, only this time grabbing onto it with a giant magnet. Dr. Octopus, mistress of magnet. The Scarlet Spider swings in because plot convenience, now equipped with a gas mask thanks to Dr. Trainer. He manages to get into the helicopter and, oh jeez, this artwork. Okay, first of all, his body has been compressed. He has no torso now, just goes from shoulder to hips. His feet are pointy like elf shoes, and apparently he's entered Mount Olympus from Xanadu. I eagerly await Ben Reilly singing Suspended in Time. The goons manage to expel him from the helicopter and shake him away, allowing Ben to demonstrate what I described earlier, him managing to quickly put together a web hang glider. He lands in the water, much to his irritation. Blast! I'm gonna get those guys! One day I'm gonna get that filthy animal! And so the first part of the story ends with 2 very poorly drawn gangsters arriving at the Club Noir, revealing that they actually own the place. You remember how last year Carnage said Peter Parker was a whirlpool of death and madness that sucks in everything around him, a psychic magnet for tragedy? Yeah, it's coincidences like this that really drive that point home. We continue into The Amazing Scarlet Spider #1, where the gangsters from last time have broken into some high-tech vault, killed a bunch of people with lasers, and have now broken into the safe. Success! I've found it! The new experimental virtual reality visor! Oculus Rift, your power is mine! Mr. So will be pleased. We shall corner the market on virtual chicken. Turns out that the place they're infiltrating is a base under the control of Dr. Octopus, whom the security forces inform of the break-in. Unfortunately, they've taken heavy losses and don't stand a chance against the gangsters, so Dr. Octopus decides to cut her losses and activates her base's self-destruct to keep the visor out of their hands. It's the supervillain equivalent of rocks fall, everyone dies. The Scarlet Spider is swinging around the area because word on the street is that the new Dr. Octopus has a hideout in this neighborhood. Oh, yeah, I can just imagine Ben Reilly running down his list of contacts to see if anybody knows about the high-tech laboratory set up by a supervillain. Here, let's get Huggy Bear on the line and see what he thinks. The explosion attracts his attention, and he finds one of Dr. Octopus's henchmen who managed to survive the explosion, but is of course a bit traumatized by the walls falling down around him and starts shooting everywhere. Spidey manages to knock him out and gets hold of the virtual reality visor he was holding. I wonder what this thing is. Some kind of ultra-mod sunglasses? At last, my Back to the Future 2 cosplay is complete! Pity it's after October 21st. He then heads to work, where his boss is yelling out the kitchen staff. You call that a bolognese sauce? Why not just use a jar of ragu? Freddy versus Gordon Ramsay. Yeah, I know we're done with Nightmare on Elm Street. I just like the Freddy versus gag. After Dr. Octopus talks to her security chief about finding out who raided her lab, she orders him not to take action against the attackers since she wants to deal with that herself. Not to worry, ma'am. I've always understood the importance of delayed gratification. TMI, unnamed anonymous character. The master programmer informs her that the visor is intact and whoever activates it will allow them to track it down. What's more, he has another plan he's initiating. We cut to... Okay, that's weird. Did they leave the script instructions in the actual comic? Anyway, we cut over to The Vault, one of the Marvel Universe's prisons for superpowered individuals. Here, a supervillain is about to be released for time served, a minor villain Spidey fought a few times in the old days called the Looter. He was also called Meteor Man, but for some reason in this comic they decided to change his name back to the Looter. Can't imagine why they would do that. You see, Carolyn, the internet offers many perks to one such as I. I can make and upload more vines per minute than anyone thought possible. They decide to hire him because why not hire someone who has a habit of failing multiple times before? The reasons why will make themselves known soon enough. Spoilers, the reasons are that he has enhanced strength and experience as a thief. And I remind you that he failed multiple times despite that. At work, Ben is hit on by his red-headed co-worker, because even though part of the idea with this whole thing was to have an unmarried Peter Parker again, they still wanted him to date a hot redhead. And I don't think we've even gotten her name yet. To save time, it's Rachel. But anyway, Ben spots the bald goon from the last issue going into the back room and recognizes him, wondering what he's up to. And what he is doing is dropping off some experimental computer chips that he did manage to retrieve from the raid. Really crappy self-destruct considering at least 2 guys survived the blast of an entire building now with nary a scratch on either. To Mr. So, the crime boss who runs the Club Noir. And it seems Mr. So has his own super secret computer monitor guy working with him. Because that's what the Clone Saga needed, more mysterious characters with ambiguous backstories and motivations. I should just start numbering them for convenience sake. After Ben goes back to Sayward's apartment, the creative team must have thought, hey, did we introduce a hot redhead yet to be a love interest for Ben? Because if we haven't, we should. And thus we're introduced to a broker named Carrie Bradley. And I really think that is honestly what happened, that they forgot that they already introduced Rachel earlier as the hot redhead. Why? Because in 2 issues more into this storyline, Carrie suddenly becomes blonde. But anyway, Ben gives Sayward the VR visor, which he recognizes as one immediately, albeit more advanced than the ones he played with back in The Greatest Responsibility. And because he's an idiot, he immediately plugs it into his system and takes it for a test drive. And of course, the master programmer detects it. Moments later, Sayward Trainer is standing amidst a strange new world, a reality completely made up of computer chips and imagination. Yeah, just show off Telero-boxing and Red Alarm already. Why is Dr. Trainer's virtual self in a purple skin-tight suit? Does he secretly want to be Catwoman? The master programmer sends some kind of virtual robot program or something to attack Sayward. And somehow, with this virtual battle taking place, it manifests objects in the real world in front of him. Okay, I could buy that Dr. Octopus invented a device that allowed you to create objects purely with your own mind. It's loose sci-fi, suspension of disbelief that such a device could exist, but it's kind of like the replicator technology in Star Trek, rearranging molecules to form new objects. It makes some sense, just not with the mind-reading part, but whatever. The problem is that they keep calling it virtual reality. I just don't get it. What is it with writers in the 90s who did crap like this? What is it about the words virtual reality that made them think, oh, a fake reality, something manufactured? Well, obviously that means the fake things can also exist in the real world. Going back to Star Trek, even they understood that. Sure, there's questions you could ask about holodecks. How do they move past the borders of the walls, for one? I think the floors are actually on a treadmill to give the illusion of movement. Or the occasional hiccup where an object does leave. Could be tied in with the replicator in the case of water leaving. But the point is that if there's nothing projecting something fake, it's not going to be able to leave the virtual setting. I mean, maybe you could argue that some kind of all-powerful being, some kind of creature manifested with godlike powers, could bend the laws of physics to make such things happen. But don't call it virtual reality! To make a long story short, too late! Scarlet Spider enters the virtual realm and the programmer creates virtual enemies for him to fight, including virtual Venom and Carnage. And suddenly this has become a remake of Wild Thing #1. It also unleashes a virtual reality Spider-Man to screw with his head. I'm sure it's supposed to be symbolic of Ben overcoming his feelings of inadequacy compared to Peter, but it's rushed. Bear in mind, we're only at the halfway point of the story, and Peter's only been gone for 2 comics. It's not well thought out, and it's really not a good thing to have this in the comic when you're trying to sell readers on Ben Reilly being the one true Spider-Man, having him beat up an effigy of the guy everybody likes. Sure, he's complimenting Peter while he does so, but that actually might make it worse, since you're instead making readers think, yeah, why aren't I reading about Peter Parker right now?
This is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot.
He takes out the robot, but Trainer is pierced by digital carnage, which sends him into a catatonic state in the real world. I shouldn't have left him alone. I should have stayed by his side. This is all my fault. All my fault! Well, there's your comparison to Peter Parker right there. You're just as good at needlessly guilt-tripping yourself. We continue into adjectiveless Scarlet Spider #1, wherein we spend the first 3 pages recapping while the Scarlet Spider drops Dr. Trainer off at a hospital. They say he's physically fine but has no brain activity, something I also wonder about with this doctor, who apparently thinks the Scarlet Spider is hanging on top of the ceiling, given that she's looking completely away from him while talking to him. When she mentions that she had to contact the police about the unusual way Dr. Trainer was delivered here, Scarlet Spider quickly swings away. In the meantime, here's Walter White playing with a 3DS XL. Yeah, that's all I've got for that joke. I've never watched Breaking Bad. This guy is actually a character called The Pro, an assassin with a rather ill-chosen name. See, it's supposed to be short for The Professional, as in a professional assassin. According to commentary on this, it's a reference to a 1994 film called Leon the Professional, which was the big screen debut of Natalie Portman, and is also about a hitman. Now, the ill-chosen part is really more of an in retrospect thing, since I get the idea behind the name. The problem is that there is a 2002 comic by Garth Ennis called The Pro. It is about a prostitute with superpowers. So every time this guy is called The Pro, my mind flashes to wrong things in regards to what he's supposed to be doing here. Also, he's extending his pinky out for some reason. What the hell? He consults his PDA, which the editor reminds us is a personal digital assistant. I love how the writers know what a PDA is, but none of them know what virtual reality is. Anyway, the Pro breaks into this crime boss's office, kills all his assistants, and orders him to shut down his operation and leave the country. He says he's not going to kill him unless he's paid to, but the threat is clear. And I'm just kind of bored by this because I'm not reading Spider-Man to see hitmen who aren't in goofy costumes. On things closer to actually relevant to the plot, we cut over to Peter, where he meets up with Carrie again, thinking she's under attack, but in reality, she's just carrying a padded suit for the self-defense class she teaches. She even invites him out for a date after her next one, so score 1 for Ben. Over to the Daily Bugle, where a reporter named Ken Ellis, who was the one who originally coined the name Scarlet Spider in the papers, is thinking about the wonders of technology. Now that I've got most of my sources online, all I've got to do is sit back and let the information pour in. And let's see what information the internet provides me today. Jet fuel can't melt steel beams? Actually, he learns there will be some big party at the Club Noir that night that'll have a bunch of known mobsters present, so he wants to make sure he'll be there. Oh, well, naturally, the place with all the known criminal connections will allow a reporter to hang out. You really do spend all your time on the internet, don't you? We cut over to cyberspace, an electronic realm of infinite boundaries, limited only by the programs which define it. It swims and swirls with potential and possibility. The capacity for pornography, cat videos, and harassment is infinite! I mean, what'll they think of next? Idiots making videos about 20-year-old comic book storylines? Anyway, the cyberspace meeting is Dr. Octopus talking to the master programmer. It was necessary for them to meet in cyberspace instead of just talking to each other over a monitor like they have in every other conversation they've had because... Oh hey, look, Tumblr. Actually, the real reason we needed to do this was because Dr. Trainer's mind is stuck in cyberspace. Again, the poor and rushed plotting here. We're left in suspense about Dr. Trainer being effectively brain dead earlier in the comic, but the reveal that his mind is alive and well in cyberspace has no fanfare or the like. It's just, oh hey, there he is. Dr. Octopus and the Master Programmer are just expositing about their plans. Dr. Octopus hired the Pro to kill Mr. So, while the Master Programmer leaked the information to Ellis so that when So is killed, the reporting on the story will send a message to anyone who tries to interfere with their plans. And Dr. Trainer's reaction? Being stuck in cyberspace does have its advantages, like being secretly able to spy on my daughter and find out what she's really up to. And without the context for that statement, you really do come across like a terrible father, don't you, Sayward? Later, during the party, Ben accidentally spills some wine on Mr. So, which gets him fired. After the Pro starts working on breaking in by knocking out 2 guards outside, Ben gets ready to clear out his locker, and frankly, I can't help but feel he was gonna get fired anyway for wearing those pants with that tux. Another sign of rushed art? Ben's giant hands! He's contacted by Dr. Trainer on an ATM that has huge buttons and a chair in front of it for some reason.
Just because it's futuristic doesn't mean it's practical.
Dr. Trainer isn't around long enough to tell him anything, but it distracts him long enough for his spider sense to go off and notice not only Ellis approaching, but also the 2 guards that the Pro had previously knocked out. They now have mind control devices on them that are forcing them to bring grenades up to the place to kill So. Ben, noticing this, leaps in and knocks the grenades away. The woman with Ellis notices Ben briefly, thinking it's Peter Parker, but no time for that, as Ben ducks away to change outfits. The Pro shows up and knocks out the guard, calling up Dr. Octopus on the ATM so she can tell So why she's having him killed. Fortunately, the Scarlet Spider interrupts. Dr. Octopus changes the target to him, tripling his fee, but that just allows Scarlet Spider the opening to knock the Pro out a window, albeit with a webbed-up hand to keep him from falling to his death. The Pro then tosses a grenade in the window because he's kind of an idiot, and it allows him a chance to escape. Somehow, while also letting the Scarlet Spider grab Ken Ellis and the woman to keep them from being killed by it. As the Scarlet Spider swings off, Ellis asks for an interview. "To the guy who gave me that stupid, pathetic, lame name? In your dreams, Ellis!" Seriously, what is everyone's in-universe problem with that name? It's a perfectly fine name, and I've heard a lot worse. Looking at you, the Fixer. The issue ends with Ben cleaning out his locker, being offered a new job by So as a bodyguard, in thanks for saving his life earlier. We end the storyline on the first issue of The Spectacular Scarlet Spider. See, Ben, that's why the name is so good! It's awesome alliteration! And we open with that looter guy from earlier, and dear lord, they've already infected him with the 90s. You know, the original looter costume wasn't great, a little generic, but it had a cool mask at least. So what did they do? Stick him in an ugly olive green skin suit and slap on cybernetic underwear.
There. Sure glad I don't look stupid in this.
But yeah, they've added cybernetic enhancements to him because everything is better with cyborgs, albeit generic, ugly-looking cyborgs. He's training with 2 other people, Aura, who can project force fields, and Override, who can access any pieces of mechanical equipment like we see here. This is the song written for the saga, the one with virtual reality. He tried to kill him with the forklift. So anyway, yeah, they fight for a bit until Dr. Octopus says they've done enough training for now. While they all get ready for a briefing, we learn that there's an undercover FBI agent there reporting on what Dr. Octopus is up to. It amounts to nothing in this storyline. Over to Spidey, he quickly recaps what's happened so far, as you do, and then heads over to the hospital to check on Dr. Trainer in civilian form. I'll assume stuff happened off-panel that we're not privy to concerning him just being able to visit him since he's not family and a superhero dropped him off, but whatever. He talks to his unconscious body, but Dr. Trainer shows up on the hospital monitors to inform him of Dr. Octopus's plans to raid the Club Noir again that night with her new cybernetic agents. And I just realized, unconscious person with their brain in cyberspace and green faces saying things about nefarious activities. Was this story the inspiration for Ripper?
This guy is unfucking believable.
And over to Carrie Bradley and her self-defense class, where, as I foretold, she apparently got a dye job between issues and is now a blonde. Ben informs her that with his new job, he's gonna have to take a rain check on the date that night. She's actually a little pissed about it. You could have told me earlier so I could have made other plans. How? You two only just met like a day ago. He doesn't have your phone number, and even if he did, I doubt you have a cell phone, and at best he could have left a message on your answering machine. And it's not like he's blowing you off completely, he just needs to reschedule because stuff happens. Geez, no wonder sitcoms always just use wacky hijinks instead of telling the truth. Because apparently if you do, the other person will be a jerk about it. Ben shows up for the new job and sees So pass off a briefcase to his goon that probably has the stolen computer chips inside of it. He wants to plant a spider tracer on him, but then Rachel shows up. And I should note that this, the final issue of the storyline, is where we finally learn her name. She brings a martini to So, who throws it in her face because he's displeased with it. Ben is naturally pissed by this, but he can't do anything since he needs to be close to So for the raid. Speaking of, they attack, forcing a truck to drive into the club. Aura and Override are there to distract the guards while Looter goes to the vault. Ben saves So from falling rubble, but makes sure to keep himself on the other side of it so that he can change clothes, then provide an exit for the civilians in the club. What's sad is that after massive brawls and explosions and gunfire at this place twice in 1 week, it's probably going to be trendier than ever. Scarlet Spider manages to defeat both villains using impact webbing and his stingers, but then the Looter comes in, informing his now unconscious colleagues that the vault was empty. He sees the Scarlet Spider and thinks he's Spider-Man. Time for the Looter to get a little payback! Looter? The Looter? Wow, he looks really lame. So, fight. Looter manages to get away with the other two. Ben quickly changes back and meets up with So again, who congratulates him once more on saving him. Great, I'm doing excellent in a job that I hate, working for a guy I don't like, and I don't even know where the chips, the reason I took the job in the first place, are. Ben, you are really a negative Nancy. At least your boss is giving you verbal encouragement. I don't think J. Jonah would have done that for you. And so our comic, and this storyline ends with So meeting up with his mysterious computer monitor ally, who stands revealed as Alistair Smythe, inventor of the robotic Spider Slayers. Oh hey, neat! I knew there was a reason I bought this old Spider Slayer toy from my childhood. Although it's been like a year or two now, and I still haven't opened it yet. Huh. Anyway, 7 years later, and these comics still suck. I'll admit, they're certainly better than a lot of other Clone Saga stories we've looked at over the last few years, but that's because they're too busy being boring and uninteresting. The stuff establishing a new status quo for Ben Reilly is fine, creating some new supporting characters, for instance, and trying to come up with a new job for him that's different from Peter. However, the plot itself is hardly the stuff of legend. It's two criminal factions trying to get their hands on some computer chip parts for reasons that have yet to be explained. And virtual reality is involved somehow. And Dr. Trainer has now become trapped in cyberspace, which I presume to be the reason why the storyline is called Virtual Mortality. Except, of course, it's not resolved, and there's nothing to suggest his life is currently in danger while in cyberspace, so it just feels like nothing was really accomplished for a 4-issue storyline. And Ben spends most of it moping for stupid reasons. I do find it hilarious that the trade for this part of the Clone Saga is called the Complete Ben Reilly Epic, when the most epic thing that happened so far is the Scarlet Spider crashing into some water. Next week, Secret Origins Month starts up again. Here's to the next 7 years.
I'm sitting on my couch reviewing comics, the worst words that you will ever see. It's sad that comic books are for geeks. Rather not, they're for everybody. Linkara. If you doubt that I am a man, I am a man.
Welcome back from low-budget space, Fred.
Still a funny guy, I see.
Ooh, I'm full of jokes. Ever hear the one about the asshole who got his head blown off twice in 1 week?
Oh, don't worry. I ain't here to do anything to you.
Oh, really? How am I even seeing you? The magic coin is far away, and I finally got some sleep.
Good on that, by the way. Just came here to tell ya, it's your move.
What?
The game, Linkara. I made my move. Now, it's your turn.
What the hell are you talking about, Freddy?
Freddy? Ha 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 ha! Now, whoever said I was Freddy? The board has been set up, human. Now, it's your turn. Ha 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 ha!
Well then, I'd better make sure I win.